but I especially want to recognize Governor J.B. Pritzker and Congresswoman Nikki Buzinski, who are joining us here on stage. In fact, we would not be here today if it weren't for the call I received from the Congresswoman back in March, who actually brought the idea of renaming the reading room in honor of the former governor to my attention. So thank you, Nikki. And Governor Pritzker, thank you for continuing Governor Edgar's legacy of principled, ethical leadership. It's an honor to have you in our building here today. Thank you. I also want to thank our State Library Director, Greg McCormick, who's on stage, who's been an outstanding leader, a great friend, and someone who cares deeply about the libraries here in the state of Illinois. Thank you, Director McCormick, for your leadership. Shortly after taking office more than 2 years ago, I received a handwritten letter from Governor Jim Edgar. He noted the great responsibility and the incredible opportunity ahead of me as the 38th Illinois Secretary of State. He encouraged me to be innovative and aggressive within every single department in this agency, and he told me to serve with honor and integrity. He also pointed out, by the way, that it's the best job in state government, maybe all of government. So when I called him to thank him for his letter, I kind of asked him to clarify something. I said, "You are also governor. Are you saying that Secretary of State's better than being governor?" And he gave a great, political answer, sort of like when you ask someone who their favorite kid is, they don't really answer. But they all have a favorite kid, so I won't say that being Secretary of State is better than being governor, but let's just say he told me it's a great job, and I could not agree more. Jim Edgar was a visionary Secretary of State. He led the office with passion and purpose. He made our roads safer by toughening penalties for drunk driving. He spearheaded the effort that requires Illinois drivers to have car insurance. He drafted legislation that made it easier for companies to incorporate in Illinois, and many, many more notable and important accomplishments. But his true passion is why we're all here today, his love for lifelong learning through our libraries. He was a champion and an advocate for all that our libraries represented, recognizing the fundamental role they play every day in educating our youth, allowing them to explore new worlds, and inspiring them to achieve whatever dreams they could imagine. You see, libraries are the pillar of every single community in Illinois, rich or poor, rural or urban. And for Governor Edgar, it was all about making that knowledge more accessible and offering a public space to foster a love for reading and intellectual growth. Serving as state librarian, Jim oversaw the construction of this incredible building, which was dedicated 35 years ago. Known affectionately to his staff as the Reader, it's only fitting that we honor his contributions and tireless advocacy for libraries and literacy programs, which still have an impact today. The room honoring the former governor houses the Illinois Authors Collection, which is a fitting tribute, as Jim Edgar assisted in the selection of the 35 authors who were given the honor of having their names engraved on the west side of the building. Some of his achievements as the state librarian included initiating the Read Illinois program to showcase the state's literary heritage, establishing the Illini Net online, a library circulation system and resource sharing catalog, and developing an adult literacy program that became a national model. His contributions as state librarian resonate more than ever today, as our libraries across the country have become lightning rods of controversy and strife across the nation. Tragically, the book bans are now commonplace, and librarians have become targets of a movement that claim to pursue freedom, but instead, in many instances, promote authoritarianism, which our country has always stood against, which is why in Illinois we fought back and banned book bans. Critical funding for our libraries have been decimated by the current administration in D.C. at a time when we need our libraries more than ever. The assault on our libraries and librarians is dangerous, it makes us less educated, and it makes our nation weaker. Additionally, over the last couple years, our libraries have endured a record number of bomb threats, and our librarians, who should be put on a pedestal as heroes, have been subjected to harassment and intimidation for simply doing their jobs. These attacks have divided our communities and placed our fundamental right to read in jeopardy. Jim Edgar was unwavering in his belief that libraries and librarians play a critical role in unlocking the potential in each and every one of us and can supply us with that inspiration, that fuel to be our best and to uplift others. Governor Edgar talks frequently about the importance of the 3 C's: civility, compromise, and compassion. Together they serve as the foundation of a healthy democracy, but they're in short supply these days. Temper tantrums and shouting matches have replaced civil discourse and constructive dialogue, while insults echo louder than ideas. We see that in the national battle for our libraries. Confrontation is rewarded more these days than collaboration and our ability to work out our differences. A lack of compassion makes it impossible to promote understanding, bridge divides, or encourage action. Politics is now measured by how effectively one can vilify someone else. As Governor Edgar tells us, we need to get back to a place where we share common ideals of respect and decency. We need to hold a shared understanding that our state and our country work best when we collaborate and work out our differences, show compassion toward those who need help, and treat one another with dignity. Compromise is not surrender, compassion is not weakness, and civility is not placation. Together, these principles that Governor Jim Edgar has lived his life by give us the space to stand firm in our beliefs, to speak passionately, and to be heard without being disrespected or dehumanized. While the need for a civil, collaborative, and compassionate political climate is now more important than ever with today's polarizing politics, the duty and responsibility of restoring the 3 C's begins with each one of us. Jim Edgar taught us that. So I want to thank Jim Edgar for being one of the finest statesmen and patriots that Illinois has ever known. I want to thank him for embodying what a true public servant looks like. I want to thank him and his family for the sacrifices they made to make Illinois and America a much better place. And on a personal level, I want to thank him for always being there for me, for always giving me great personal and political advice, and for always being just a remarkable person and a remarkable friend. Congratulations, Governor, on this special honor here today. And with that, I want to call up former State Library Director Bridget Lamont to say a few words. Bridget.
Thank you, Secretary Janulis. Thank you for inviting me back to this gorgeous building. It gives me great joy to be here. But I really want to thank the Secretary for his steadfast support of the right to read. You have been a national leader, and we need people like you, so thank you. Governor Pritzker, Governor Edgar, my good friend, Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski, and so many other honored guests. The Illinois State Library was founded in 1839 and through the years was housed in many locations: the old state capitol, the new state capitol, and the Hallett Building, the latter among several floors of the old Hallett Building. It wasn't until 1985, nearly 100 years later, that a Secretary of State who embraced his role as state librarian convinced the governor and the General Assembly of the importance and the necessity of the construction of a building for the state library. With Jim Edgar's commitment, we didn't have to wait another 100 years. As an aside, it was Senate Bill 1, passed in 1842, which designated the Secretary of State in Illinois as the state librarian. Jim Edgar embraced that role so effectively that other secretaries of state around the country called him for advice about adding state librarian to their portfolios. And for a librarian like me to have such phenomenal support from an elected official was simply unheard of. I was the envy of my peers. The State Library serves two equally important functions. One, the coordinator of the single largest network of libraries in the country, and two, to provide information and research needs for state government. We're sort of like an Illinois Library of Congress. And so the planning and construction began for the library. Then Secretary, now Governor Edgar, told me he'd plan the exterior of the building and I could do the interior. Of course I agreed, but then I said asked if he would consider doing the exterior frieze to honor Illinois' literary heritage. We were a library after all. So we did with the names of 35 honored authors, limited only by the number of letters that would fit on the frieze around this building. The Secretary issued a press release inviting the people of Illinois to nominate Illinois authors. We received columns that appeared in church bulletins, poems, self-published biographies, but ultimately the names were chosen by a committee of librarians and the directors of the Illinois Humanities and Illinois Arts Council with the leadership of Governor Edgar. To further emphasize Illinois' literary heritage, not everybody who publishes and writes lives on the East Coast or the West Coast. We referred to the room where the books were as simply the Illinois Authors Room. Not just a place to house the collection of works by Illinois authors, but as a room for reading, reflection, and respite from the deal-making and frenzy of the state capitol, and also for casual library visitors. This room hosted many Illinois authors, festivals, with authors like Scott Turow, photographer and writer Ray Beal, poet John Knopfel, and of course, Gwendolyn Brooks. We hosted a visit from a young Illinois senator who donated a copy of his first book called Dreams from My Father, and I think this collection includes a book by author Stacey Edgar, and the book is called Global Girlfriends. The collection continues to grow, and the room has retained its aura and its importance. This library, with its celebration of Illinois authors, the research collection for Illinois state government, and its phenomenal support of all the libraries in Illinois would never have happened without the vision and the persistence of Jim Edgar. Thank you so much, Governor Edgar.
Thank you, Bridget. Next, I'd like to bring up my friend and our wonderful Congresswoman, Nikki Budzinski.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be with all of you on a very special day. I want to first take a moment, though, to acknowledge my co-conspirator in this idea, which was Bridget Lamont, in bringing everybody together for this special dedication. And I also just want to say a special thank you to Secretary of State Gene Julius and his wonderful team that really helped to make this dedication the special moment that it is today. Yeah. I had the privilege of first meeting Governor Edgar when I had the honor of serving as the executive director of then Governor-elect Pritzker's transition team. Governor Edgar served as the chair of that transition team, something in a role that he had filled for both governor-elects in the Republican and Democratic Party. And it was a very special opportunity for me to see firsthand Governor Edgar's love of state government. his belief that state government at its core and at its best serves everyone in Illinois, that it doesn't turn away from our most vulnerable in our society, in our communities, and that state government itself might not have the answer to all of the struggles that ail us, but it is an important partner and an effective tool in addressing some of the most serious challenges we have in our communities. It was a tremendous honor to get to see that up close in this role. I then went on, though, to learn about leadership as a Governor Edgar Fellow. I'm tremendously honored to be one of, I think, almost 500 people in the state of Illinois that can call themselves fellows and participants in the Governor Edgar Fellows Program. These 500 people are city council members, they're mayors, they're state legislators, and some of them go on to be congresspeople. But one of the most important things you learn as a Governor Edgar Fellow is about leadership and what leadership really looks like in today's society. The leadership is not about how many clicks you get, how many likes you get, or how many Twitter fights you might get into with other colleagues on either side of the aisle. The leadership is really about never giving up on finding common ground in all corners of our society and across all parties and ideologies. The compromise and negotiations is actually a very effective leadership tool to getting things done for all of our constituents. And that working together, and in fact bipartisanship, is something that is critical and something that as an elected official, you'll never regret trying to strive to achieve. And that is what I learned and I carry with me every day as I serve now in the United States House of Representatives. That leadership, that love of state government. And I can tell you in Washington, many other people would benefit from going through the Edgar Fellows Program. But I just want to say on a personal note, it has been a tremendous honor to call Governor Edgar, and I also want to acknowledge Brenda Edgar as friends of mine, as mentors that I can count on and call on, just like Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias mentioned. Always available, always able to give his advice and opinions on what you should or shouldn't be doing, and always available, which is so important. I want to say in particular, it meant a lot to me when, as someone that was always staff my whole life and loved being staff, I decided to run for office. When I got elected to my first elected position, as a Democrat, it was still Governor Edgar that came to my election night party to celebrate with me. And it meant a lot, and I think it says a lot about who he is, that really regardless of party, it's about people. It's about helping our community. It's about believing in government and that government can lend a hand to all of us and unite us. And I think that's who Governor Edgar is, and that's why I'm so tremendously honored to be a part of this dedication with each and every one of you, that I know each of you means so much to him and he means to you. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you to Governor Edgar.
And I'm sure Governor Edgar will mention his family, but thank you for being here and thank you for the many sacrifices that you have all made for our state. And next I'd like to call up our wonderful Governor J.B. Pritzker, who, by the way, has always been there fighting for our libraries. Governor Pritzker will then introduce our honored guest. Governor Pritzker.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I want you to know what a privilege it is for me as the current governor to be able to honor such an exemplary public servant, an Illinois legend, a truly good man who has served this state so incredibly well, Governor Jim Edgar. And also, as a side note, yes, he was Secretary of State too. But today, of course, we're honoring him in part because of that role, but of course the other title, as Bridget mentioned, as state librarian. Before I say a few words about my own experiences with Governor Edgar and about his history. I want to thank Secretary Alexi Giannoulias, Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski, and of course, former state director of the libraries, and that's Bridget Lamont. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for helping us to honor the great work of an outstanding Illinois statesman. Now, I also want to acknowledge two people who are here in the audience who also serve in public service today and in our government. One is our Speaker of the House, Chris Welch, and I know she was supposed to be here by now and may not already have arrived, but it's Senator Tammy Duckworth. So thank them for their great leadership and service. Governor Edgar, you have been a force for good for this state and someone that I admire and hold the deepest respect for. Whenever I have taken a new job in the course of my life, I have always looked for people whose service is worthy of emulating. And sometimes it's a mentor who's willing to take me on as a mentee. Sometimes it's someone whose history and accomplishments I can study and try to understand what made them so successful. But when you become governor of Illinois, let's just say you have to be very choosy about which governor you want to emulate and what you want to emulate about them. But you don't have to look very far in this state to find one of the greats. It should tell you all you need to know about Jim Edgar, that he served with honor and integrity, and he emerged from this job with a continuing, relentless passion for, well, upholding the political institutions that we all rely upon. Someone with seemingly unlimited energy to continue bettering them. When I was becoming governor, before I had been sworn in, I went to see Governor Edgar. He kindly invited me over to his home, and I sat down hoping that I would learn all the wisdom of the ages about how to be governor. And he said one really important thing to me. Now remember the moment, it was late 2018. He said, you really only have one critical job as governor of the state of Illinois, and that's pass a budget. You remember the moment we were in. We are, by the way, back in a moment 4 days from now. I'm looking at all the Republicans who no doubt will vote for the budget in 4 days that are here. But I still remember him admonishing me and telling me that you can't do this job if you're not prioritizing things through the way you put together a budget and then getting that budget passed. And it tells you something, once again, about his dedication to the state of Illinois, that he looked me in the eye, and very resolutely said, don't forget what your primary duty is. From the Illinois House of Representatives to the Secretary of State's office to the governorship, Jim Edgar has built a truly unparalleled legacy of service. We could fill an entire section of this library with the ways that he has improved the state of Illinois. You could talk about his leadership during times of crisis and hardship, or the number of jobs that he created while he was in office. The record really is endless. But for me, his most enduring contribution can be summarized by a single quote of his. When he was first elected as Secretary of State, he broke with tradition and kept many of the employees who were hired by his Democratic predecessor. He kept them on here. Many Republicans were surprised and expressed consternation, to which he told them, to me, the best politics is good government. If you do your job well, then that's going to reflect well on me, and that's the best politics there is. Good government is good politics, and good politics is good government. You don't really hear that enough anymore, do you? But that view, that honest loyalty to the people of Illinois, is what makes Jim Edgar an icon, no matter what party you belong to. He has not only guided his every move in a bipartisan fashion, but he has also kept true to his own moral compass from day one to today. There is perhaps no more fitting tribute to him, of course, than the Illinois State Library Reading Room, a place that holds within it shelves and pages upon pages that extol the virtue that Jim Edgar has exemplified and fought for throughout his life: civic engagement, public good, intellectual freedom. It's also a reminder of all he has done for literacy and intellectual advancement in the state of Illinois and beyond. Jim Edgar dedicated much of his work to ensuring that all Illinoisans had access to these treasured institutions. From the construction of the new Illinois State Library to extensive rural library investments to his nationally renowned adult literacy program. He has connected so many across our state with new opportunities to learn, to read, to grow. Now countless readers will see his name emblazoned on a place that all of us hold dear. I'm really proud, truly proud, to be celebrating this important dedication with all of you today and with a statesman, a genuine public servant, and a friend. And it's my great privilege to introduce our honoree. Please welcome Governor Jim Edgar.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you. I've got a long speech, so you might want to sit down. And Governor, Mr. Secretary, Congresswoman, Bridget, thank you very much for those kind words. You know, I'm glad I lived long enough to have that many Democrats say such nice things about me. Thank you very much. Also, I want to make a comment. Some of you were at an event about 4 weeks ago, the Edgar Fellows, and I had a hat on. And I said I wasn't ready yet. My ego would not yet deal with my chemo hairline. Well, today I was getting ready to come over here, and I thought, nah, it's time. It's time. So I left the hat in the car. But it dawned on me, the beautiful music we heard from the choir is the Laurel Methodist Church, where Brenda and I are members. And I have not been in church since we came back because I believe it's extremely impolite to wear a hat in church. Now they know that I do appear without a hat, and we're going to have to be in church come Sunday. And let me thank all of you who are here in the audience. As I look around this room, I see a lot of old friends, people who really deserve a lot of the credit that was being given to me by the speakers before me here today. It's great to see all of you. Theoretically, I'm not supposed to mingle in crowds yet because of my chemo, but I might mingle a little bit because looking out at this crowd, none of you can have anything that's going to hurt me, I'm sure. You know, I had the great opportunity to serve in a lot of different capacities in both the executive and legislative branch of government in more than my 30 years in state government. But there was no job that I enjoyed more than being state librarian. If you know anything about me, you know I love books. Brenda will tell you, I love books. I got books all over the house. She's scared to death that something's going to happen to me and she's going to be stuck with all those books. But I really enjoyed that role. And we are fortunate in Illinois. We have many fine local libraries as well as a state library. In fact, as I would travel the state, I would always evaluate towns and cities on how good their library was. If they had a good library, that was a good town. That was a good place to live because you had the support of the community, people were involved. So I love being a state librarian. I also realized that the state library was hid away in the Centennial Building. I mean, it was terrible. I went over there and I thought, this is not where it should be. And for years, there had been this plot of land that had been designated to be where the new library would be, but nothing ever happened. Nobody ever pushed the new library. It wasn't the right time. Well, about halfway through my 10 years as Secretary of State, State Librarian, Jim Thompson, who was governor, was doing one of his building programs. He did a lot of building programs. I thought, well, if he's going to go spend millions and billions, maybe I can get the library included. And the governor was very gracious. I went to see him, and he said, of course, we'll include the new state library in my new Build Illinois program. And as I started to leave, he said, oh, by the way, we're a little short on how we're going to pay for this new construction program I've got. And I've got an idea. We're going to charge sales tax on individuals who sell their cars to other people. At that point, there were a lot of people, they'd sell 4 or 5 cars a year, they didn't have to pay any tax. They weren't a car dealer. But that was a lot of money that was kind of slipping away from the state. So he said, we need to cover that. And oh, by the way, you're going to collect it, which endeared me to a lot of people around the state. Well, the library, I got his support, and I got half of what you needed in Springfield at that time. The other half, I had to go talk to Speaker Madigan. Now, actually, Speaker Madigan was very gracious. He always came down to my office. Never said much, but he would come down to my office. I'd ask him for something. He'd sit there and kind of hit his paper. Never tell me if he was going to do it or not, but he would come to my office. And he came that day, and he said, first thing he said, and this was a lot of conversation from Speaker Madigan, he said, who's going to design this library? He said, it's not going to be like that state building in Chicago. And I said, no, Governor Thompson is not going to design the new state library. I'm going to design the new state library, and it's going to fit into the rest of the state capitol. It's not going to look like the Attorney General building or the State Bar Association building, but it's going to look like the Centennial building and the Supreme Court and the Capitol. Well, I could tell I persuaded him on that. Then he said, well, how much is it going to cost? And I said, well, about $30 million. He said, oh, good. He says, we're building a new library in Chicago, public library, so that means we get $30 million too. And I thought, great, I've got to go out and now raise $60 million. And I looked at him, I said, well, Mr. Speaker, no, I'm talking about building a state library. You're talking about building a local library. You understand that Chicago is a city within the state of Illinois. It's not on equal par with the state of Illinois. Now, that's a concept I don't think I ever got across to Speaker Madigan. But fortunately, he didn't hold me to coming up with $30 million additional dollars. So we got the library built. Now, Governor Thompson was not real crazy about my design. He told me so. He said, that's really dull. And when it got built, we had him come over to speak. And as someone mentioned today, you'd have thought he designed the building in his speech. But he was very gracious. He said, no. He said, Secretary Edgar was right. I was wrong. This is the kind of building it should be. And this is the kind of building the State Library should be. This is a beautiful building. Some of you maybe have never been in here before. Walk around. If nothing else, be sure to see the staircases here. I came by yesterday just to make sure I knew where I was going today, and I forgot how beautiful these staircases are. They kind of get missed. The reading room, this whole building, I think, is one of the most beautiful buildings of government in the state of Illinois. Now, I'm very grateful for the honor today. I'm very grateful for what the kind words people had to say today. But I'm going to lecture a little bit. I don't get a chance to do this much anymore since I don't hold any governmental role. But then I can say whatever I want to say because I don't have to worry about the electorate. One word of advice I'm going to just mention talking about this library because we are in the closing days of the legislature. And I'm sure many of you have promises from many other people in this room. They're going to take care of your issue. Don't forget to remind them. On this building, Governor Thompson, we're going to put the state library in the Build Illinois legislation. It's going to get done. The last night of the session, my legislative liaison, Mark Bozell, came and told Al Grossball, who was my deputy secretary of state, he said, it's not in the bill. It was the last night of the session. And so Al Grossball told me he had to go find Jim Riley, who was Thompson's main guy, who was one of my best friends. He couldn't find him that night. He was gone. So he told some person that worked for Jim Riley, and he said, I wasn't sure they were going to do it. Well, lo and behold, they did it. We got the state library. But what I want to remind you, don't think just because they told you a month ago they're going to do it. They might forget. So in the next 4 days, you better just check on the people who promised you they were going to do these things, because you might find on June 1st it's not in the bill, which is a terrible thing. But the most important thing I want to tell you today, make use of this beautiful building. This building ought to be, libraries are only good if people are in them. That's what a library is about, people. And we need to have people in this library all the time. There should be lectures here, there should be gatherings, there's some, but there could be a lot more to make use of this beautiful facility. And the most important thing is, unlock the front door. If you've ever tried to get in this library, I've tried many times, it's always locked. Got to come in this side door and sneak in. You think you're kind of coming in you're breaking in or something. That door ought to be unlocked at all times during the day and encouraged, because I think a lot of people come to that front door, can't get in, they leave. We need them in here. We need them to make use of this beautiful facility. So that's my lecture for the day. Make use of this building. It's a beautiful building. And let me again just say how honored I am by all of you being here and for doing this for me today. This building, I didn't get to build many buildings. We were broke most of the time I was governor. We didn't have much money. This was one I got to do at the end of my Secretary of State. I think we did get Site M, the biggest state park in the state, and we did get the natural resource building out at the fairgrounds. That's about the only money we had during those 8 years I was governor. But this, to me, is by far the most beautiful building that I've been involved with, and I feel very, very honored today that my name is at least going to be on the wall here, and people are going to say, well, who is that guy? Now, in a minute, they're going to unveil this plaque. I came here yesterday and looked at it, and I love this plaque. I have hair. And I hope someday that we'll defy medical science and I'll have hair again and I'll be back. Thank you so much.
So I guess you're saying you want me to leave the doors open more often. Thank you, Governor Edgar. Thank you to everyone for being here. We're now going to proceed to the unveiling. I think we're going to make room. Are we making room for the media and for photos? But again, let's have a loud round of applause for one of the finest statesmen our state has ever seen, Governor Jim Edgar.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.
Great to see you.
The transit reform bill was introduced today, the long-awaited transit reform bill. I mean, I think we're still waiting to see whether there's going to be funding. Have you reviewed the bill? Have you seen it? If so, what are your thoughts?
Only very briefly. I really haven't looked at all the details of it. We've certainly been in the negotiations regarding the governance issues. I have to say I had not seen the revenue items, or at least the list of the ones that were put out before. So, we're obviously going to take a look at that.
Hey, Governor. Long time.
Hello.
Rep. Edgar said the Black Caucus is opposed to your bill expanding four-year degrees in community colleges, and it appears several members of the Black Caucus are opposed to your ban on cell phones in schools. Have you, or do you plan on meeting with members of the Black Caucus or the full Black Caucus soon?
I don't have any plans to meet with them. They're obviously individual members have differing opinions from Rep. Tarver. And so hopefully these will both be put up for a vote in the House so that we can show the majority that they will garner if they're put up for a vote.
Are you concerned that the Black Caucus has enough members to kill these bills?
Not concerned. I think that I think what they should be reminded of is the universities have been in negotiations for a couple of months and came to a point where they're neutral on the bill. And it's important to remember that what we're trying to do is provide for people who otherwise can't afford a four-year university education the opportunity to get a great education, four-year degree, and a job that's associated with that. And that's really all these baccalaureates are really about. It's not opening up a bunch of new four-year universities, but rather programs that require a four-year degree that are now affordable and local to many people where we need those jobs filled.
Governor, as you burnish your national profile, you're not just doing the Sunday shows, you're doing The View and Jimmy Kimmel. Whom are you trying to reach, and how do you choose these venues?
Well, let me remind you that there are things going on outside of the state of Illinois that have terrible negative effects on the people of Illinois, and I'm talking about what's happening in Washington, D.C. So the purpose, of course, is to make sure that we're having our voices heard, that we're impacting the federal discussion, and hopefully preserving the services that people in Illinois have, frankly, paid for and deserve.
Governor, last week House Democrats were presented kind of a menu of options in the caucus on revenue, since they weren't so hot in some of your ideas in your introduced budget. One of them was broadening the sales tax to cover services. Would you support that idea? And if not, what revenue options are you considering to balance the budget? No,
I've been opposed to any taxes that are broad-based or that would affect working families in this budget.
What would you do if you got a budget that had stuff like that in it?
I'm telling you, anything that's broad-based and that would have a negative impact on working families, I would veto a budget like that.
Governor, CMS announced they're going to start kind of rationing back some of the money for Medicaid for non-citizens. They weren't focused just on like emergency services. How's that going to impact the HBIS program?
Well, we'll see what happens. That's, of course, in the bill that's been introduced, the one big bad bill that has gone through the House that we're now going to wait for the Senate to rule on. We'll know more, of course, when it goes through. And I think there are a lot of people that are opposed to, in the Senate, opposed to the cuts in Medicaid. The impact on Republican districts and senators representing states that voted Republican is just as great, if not greater, than the impact on Democratic districts and states that voted Democratic. So I think there's deep concern among senators about those Medicaid cuts, and I think that means at least there is a chance that we'll be able to preserve medical services for people across the country, veteran services for people. They're trying to take away SNAP benefits from children across the country, and this is all because Donald Trump frankly doesn't give a darn about working people, about folks who are vulnerable in our society, and only wants to give a massive tax cut to the wealthiest people in the country.
This is the most challenging year in modern times for the budget. Have you had any kind of dialogue with Democratic leaders or legislative leaders in the last week or two about what their hang-ups might be, what they're trying to do to shore everything up to maybe try to adjourn on time by Saturday? Like, have you? Oh,
lots of conversation. We don't sit idle, as you may know, in the month of May, especially virtually every day. I talk to someone, both in the Democratic or the Republican caucus, maybe not every day with Republicans, but frequently, frankly. And in the spirit of Jim Edgar, it's important to me to have conversations across the aisle, even if they don't intend to vote for a budget in the end. There are things, good ideas, I've often said, come from Republicans too, and so we want to make sure that those are included.
What are some of the you said that you would
Cole.
veto a budget that had a broad tax increase. Do the legislative leaders share that sentiment? Have you had conversations with at least?
I've been
Wells
pretty
Fargo
clear
about
with
that?
I've been pretty clear with everybody that individual income taxes, corporate income taxes, sales taxes. We are not about raising those taxes at all. I would veto a bill that does that.
Governor, you've named PBM reform a top priority this session, and
I didn't hear. I named what?
PBM reform.
PBM, yes, thank you.
As negotiations go on, behind closed doors, do you still expect some of those key proposals like fair reimbursement methods or greater transparency in PBM pricing to be part of that final bill?
I believe so. We've had, of course, our negotiators in the room with House and Senate negotiators to make sure that the fundamentals of that bill are intact when it comes up for a vote. So, I believe that we'll get most of, if not all of, what we had hoped to.
Governor, across the street right now, a bill's being heard in committee that would grant Decatur a Racino. It would also lift the veto that Hawthorne has on a South Suburban Cook Racino project. I know you have talked about this before, but Mayor of Decatur has sent you a letter in support. Have you given some thought on whether you support that bill?
Here's what I know. We've been working very hard to bring jobs to Decatur. As I think you may know, much of our economic development is focused on exurban and rural areas of the state, basically all of downstate. And so I hope the best for Decatur. I don't have a position on the bill that's being debated. But as you know, I've been to Decatur many, many times, particularly as we brought jobs and opportunity to people who live in that area.
Have you had conversations about that bill?
Do I have a what?
Have you had conversations with the stakeholders on that?
No. I have, I understand what the bill is about, but I haven't been, on one side or the other of it. I've just heard what the stakeholders are interested in.
Gavin Newsom has taken several steps to moderate himself. At least I read an AP story that said he's moving toward the middle. Gretchen Whitmer's had her own optics problems with Donald Trump. You seem to be riding along like being a lefty. Do you feel any need or desire to move more toward the middle as you make yourself known to the American people?
I would start by saying I am who I am. I think you've all seen me operate. You know what I believe in. And just to this point, I've done more for economic development in this state than probably any governor since Jim Thompson, maybe Jim Edgar. And I believe very strongly that we need to grow our economy while we're also taking care of the most vulnerable in our society, not to mention preserving the services that working families deserve. And that's the way I've operated for 6.5 years, and I continue to operate that way.
I am who I am.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Governor,
Yeah,
national
spinach,
politics,
right?
Yeah. There's a lot of questions about Biden's condition. He may have actually been running the country. Your thoughts on this? Jake Tapper's book's out. A lot of people are saying Democrats need to, have some kind of come to Jesus moment.
I don't know. What I can tell you is I believe very strongly that we should be looking forward, not backward. I never had any experiences with President Biden in the, 5-7 times that I was with him that indicated to me that he could not run the country or didn't have his faculties on him. But I know there's a book out. I haven't read the book yet. I think a couple of people who work for me have read it, but I haven't quite gotten around to it.
This is going to be the last one, guys. Last one.
You mentioned the revenue piece with transit reform for Northeastern Illinois. What
Yes.
sorts of conversations have you or have folks in your administration had about what some of those specific sources might be to address the budget gap there?
I have not been pushing any specific sources. This is, as you know, Senator Villi Valem has been a real leader on this. And, what I've been focused on is how are we going to operate it going forward? What are the governance changes? And here's why that's important. If that doesn't sound important, here's why it's important. People should be able to get on a bus, a train, a transit of any sort, and not have to worry about which ticket they have and the transfers that they may need to make and think about what the services are that RTA or that CTA are providing, they should just be able to get on and go where they want to go. And that has not been happening with the governance that we've had up to now. So I think organizing that governance properly so the investments are made across the system where they are needed most. And we're not favoring one thing over another, where what we really need is to uplift the entire system, make it safe for everybody to ride, get to work, go to school, get home safely. Hyper important to me that we're doing that, because you can't put money into something that doesn't guarantee that at the start.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you,
sir.